If there's one thing that you can do right now that's completely within your control to improve your overall mood and your happiness levels, to increase your productivity at work, and to actually be more present in your relationships, then the one thing would be to cut down on ultra-processed foods. Now, you've probably heard of ultra-processed foods, and you probably already know that they're bad. But this isn't the real problem, because even though you know it's bad, you're probably still eating it. And so the real problem is going deeper and understanding what's going to actually influence your behavior. I don't think we're doing a very good job at the moment. If you just go to any big supermarket and you see what's being sold, you can clearly tell that the food companies that sell the ultra-processed foods still dominate the market. They still dominate the shelves. And that signals to me that they're still ultra profitable, meaning that people are still buying the foods in the masses, right? If there was no demand, there'll be no supply. And so the goal of this video, not just telling you that they're bad, but actually influencing real behavior change. And if you're new here, I'm Anthony and I'm a fitness coach who's also a medic. So firstly, just a kind of a brief definition. I really just see it as they're not really real foods. They're just manufactured in a lab to make them ultra palatable. They're just designed to make us addicted to them so they can sell more of it to make more money. That's essentially how I see it. Large amounts of added ingredients, a lot of chemical modification. I realized the extent of the problem recently when my friend looked at my food that I just cooked, right? And he said, "How can you eat that? That looks so bland." And all I had in front of me was some salmon, some boiled potatoes, some tomatoes, and some avocado on a plate. And it was seasoned, it had some salt and pepper, some lemon juice, tasted good to me. And the fact that they said it looked so bland, I just thought about what that really meant and the deeper meaning behind that. The deeper meaning behind that is these companies have manipulated with food so much to the point that normal food is no longer seen to be normal. Like 50 years ago, this food would have been a luxury, and it's crazy to me. But anyway, that's the problem. So how do we actually stop this? Understanding the enemy, truly understanding the enemy. I think the first step is, having awareness of how bad the problem really is and the mechanism behind how they work. So ultra-processed foods essentially hijack our brain. They essentially reward you with dopamine without you doing anything to earn it. When we're overstimulated with dopamine, it leads to those feelings of cravings, and it leads to this really negative spiral where we're eating overprocessed foods and then we're going back for more because the dopamine is so addictive. If I have a burger at McDonald's, I'm more likely to then order an ice cream as well. I watched this documentary about how they make their food at McDonald's. They hire people to get the exact formula to make these foods hyper palatable, right? Basically to make it taste so flipping good. They get the perfect combination of fat, salt, sugar to make it this perfect, ideal chemical formula for our brain. And then there are also food industry tricks like changing the texture, the crunch, the sounds that it makes when you eat the food. It's not by accident. It's really heavily designed and formulated on purpose. It makes you feel disgusted because you're being controlled, and no one likes to feel being controlled. The next step is to reset our dopamine system so that we're no longer addicted. You might be thinking, well, isn't the answer obvious? You just stop eating it. Well, it's not so simple, because now that we're addicted to the food, it's very difficult to just go cold turkey on it. In medicine, when someone is an alcoholic and they drink in excess every single day, and they're starting to, and they drink so much, we can't just immediately go cold turkey and tell the patient to stop drinking alcohol. Not only is it unrealistic to expect them to be able to resist the urges, it also causes physical withdrawal symptoms. So when you stop drinking alcohol, you can get something called delirium tremens, where you can literally get tremors. You can even get seizures and hallucinations in rare scenarios. So that's why we gradually taper down the dose. So we do the same with food. Say, for example, you're eating McDonald's every single day. If you're eating that every single day, then to just completely go cold turkey is probably not the best thing to do. You need to gradually reduce the dose. Cut out the ultra-processed foods on one day. of the week. And then you can gradually increase it to 2, 3, 4. This way you let your taste buds and your dopamine system reset. This thing called neuroadaptation starts to happen. Over time, your brain starts to become less sensitive to the rewards of ultra-processed foods, and natural foods start tasting good again. And that brings me perfectly on to the third point, which is rewiring reward. Making real food exciting again. I'm gonna make a hat one day about making real food great again. But anyway, as you're reducing the dose of the poison, okay, the ultra-processed food, you gradually replace those foods with good foods. When I say good foods, I mean real food, real whole foods, single ingredient foods that you can dig up from the ground, right? They're created naturally in our planet, in our environment. The food that we were eating 50 years ago. For example, instead of chips at McDonald's, instead you could make your own homemade fries or sweet potato fries. That is a healthier alternative. Instead of eating a big bag of crisps every time you sit down and watch TV, instead swap it out for some popcorn. A much healthier, lower calorie alternative. So just making these small swaps will go a long way. Over time, your brain will start associating these healthy, real foods with the same pleasure that you experienced before. And again, emphasizing the fact that this process isn't overnight. Don't expect it to be overnight. Expect times where you'll have cravings. That's why it's important to reduce the dose rather than going cold turkey. Instead of having this all or nothing approach where you feel like a failure because you've had one donut, right? Gradually reduce the dose. Okay, so the next thing is identity shifts and habit stacking. And if you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, you'll already be aware of this concept. Instead of coming from this mindset of, oh, I can't eat that. It's a punishment. I can't eat that. I'm punishing myself. Instead of coming from that angle, you come from the angle of, I don't eat that. I don't eat that. I don't eat that because I'm not the type of person that eats that food. I'm a healthy individual, and healthy individuals don't eat that food. To go a step further, I consider myself an athlete, right? And an athlete will not eat that food. Simple as that. If you're looking at a food and you think, would an athlete eat that? And if the answer is no, then you don't eat it. Simple as that. Similarly to how I cut down on alcohol, I used to say, I can't drink today. I can't drink today. I can't drink today because I have work tomorrow. It just makes you want to drink more because naturally, we all have that inner voice that wants to break the rules, right? So if you say you can't do something, you naturally try and find a way to do it. And the next thing is habit stacking. So essentially associating habits with certain things you do in the day. So for example, if you want to go to the gym more, I have a routine of as soon as I come home, I already have my gym clothes laid out on my bed. So every day when I come back from work, I go upstairs, I see the clothes on my bed, I get changed into the clothes straight away. And therefore, when I'm in the clothes, then I associate being in the clothes with the gym. So I go straight to the gym. Or for example, in the living room where you watch TV, instead of having a big bag of crisps just sitting there or your snacks on the table, literally begging to be eaten every time you go on the sofa, instead replace those with a fruit bowl. Have a fruit bowl on the table in the living room instead of the big bag of crisps. And to go a step further, environment design. All the people who preach discipline, imagine locking David Goggins in a room where the room is full of cheeseburgers, fries, donuts. The room is full of these foods and you're locking David Goggins inside the room and he has nothing else to do. Think about how different it is now. I guarantee you the most disciplined people will break. So it's not about discipline, it's about your environment. Don't set yourself up for failure, set yourself up for success. Don't buy the foods in the first place. Don't keep it in your cupboard. Because going back to what I said before, we find a way to break the rules because we like to break the rules. So don't let yourself have the opportunity to break the rules. Secondly, I stopped following these food porn accounts, right? I used to follow this account called Only Scrans on Instagram, and it's essentially just had a bunch of processed food and it made me hungry every time. And it was just the most stupid thing ever. And lastly, but most importantly, once you've done this for long enough and you start to become addicted to the benefits of this whole food, clean, healthy diet, for example, better mood, less brain fog, more energized with your girlfriend, your partner, more energy to do exercise, which makes you feel better. You're going to lose weight, which is going to increase your confidence. Being more productive at work and thus being able to make more money. You'll have better sleep quality. Everything. There's too many to count. And once you've experienced this life, it's hard to go back. And the end stage is this. The end stage is this. You get to a point where you might occasionally eat ultra-processed food. I'm not saying it won't happen. I still eat this food from time to time, but very occasionally. And when you do eat the food, it will still taste good in the moment just because of how much money these companies have poured into chemically designing this food to literally hit our exact pleasure points. But how you immediately feel after, and in the hours to days after, how badly it's going to affect your energy, your brain fog, how you feel about yourself, and how you show up for your relationships will remind you of why you stopped in the first place. So when I do occasionally eat at McDonald's now, I feel like garbage. I feel like trash for hours to days after. It affects my stomach, it affects my mental energy and clarity, and it affects how I am. I'm literally in a bad mood after I eat this food. The biggest difficulty with all of this, you only realize how truly bad it is once you've been clean from it for a while. When you're in it, you can't see how bad it is. Think about any bad habit that you used to do in the past. It's only now, in hindsight, when you look back at the past, that you can see how bad it was, how truly bad it was. And it's like the same idea of you don't know what you don't know. When you don't know how bad it is because you're so deep in the midst of it. So you need to have some trust in the process, some patience. But what I can promise you is that it will pay dividends across your whole life and across the most important aspects that we all care about. The people you love, your business or your job, and your ability to be financially comfortable, your fitness and your health. These foods are full of saturated fats, clog up our blood vessels, the blood vessels to our heart, the blood vessels to our brain, the blood vessels to our legs, and it increases our risks of heart attacks, strokes, and diabetes, to put it in really blunt terms. I can't promise that it will be easy, but in the long run, I can promise you that it will completely change your life.